Hello and welcome back to Pod Fiction. This week I'm joined by my co-hosts Ethan and Harley.
Hello.
Harley's a co-host, yay!
Woo, I've been promoted.
In this episode we'll be discussing John Singleton's Boyz N The Hood, starring Ice Cube. John Singleton was only 23 at the time of recording, and you can see his progression throughout the film. He was also nominated for the Best Academy Award for Best Director, becoming the first African American and youngest person to have ever been nominated.
Woo, that's impressive.
So to start off, I want to ask you guys a question. Do you
Okay.
think that the use of strong language, especially the N-word and the way that the characters refer to women in this film, is warranted and appropriate?
I think the N-word's okay in this film because it's appropriate to their culture and it's not too much of a problem, that word. But I think maybe the way they treat women, it's the men the way they treat women, not women saying those words to themselves.
But it's
I
also
feel like
brought up a lot in itself in the film. Like a lot of the female characters bring that up in the film. But like,
Yeah, I
why
think-
do you call us this?
I think it's I think it's good for the film. I think it's fine as a film. Because it's approached by the characters, it's actually part of the story. It's not just them doing that just because the filmmakers don't like women or something like that.
Yeah,
I think it's appropriate. I think
adds
it's
to
okay.
the narrative. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't see a problem with it.
I also think it's necessary because I don't think you could really paint a good portrait of the setting if you don't include words like that. Words that is a very big thing in black culture, you know, like in hip hop at the time. It was set in the 90s and there was a lot of, you know, naughty words used to refer to women and other black Americans. So I think it's necessary because if we were to watch the movie and it was so quaint and nice the whole way through and they didn't say any of those words, then it would sort of be lacking in its depiction of the setting.
I agree with that, and I think also it helps build the character profiles. You learn a lot about the characters in this film by the way they speak and talk to other characters. I also want to move on to the pacing in the film. Personally had a slight issue with it, especially
No,
towards the
okay.
middle.
No, it's not about... Okay, so the pacing is all over the place. However, I think that's done to reflect the setting. Because look at the film.
That's the
You
point.
can go... He was walking to the shop to go get milk, and he died. He got shot and killed. So I think the pacing sort of reflects... I don't know if this is overanalyzation or this is what John Singleton wanted to do. However, I think as someone... You know, he this was an idea he had for a very long time, so I think he must have done this purposefully, just because if you look at the film, the pacing is all over the place because it's sort of their lives. Imagine walking down the street, going to get some milk from the shop and being scared you're going to get gunned down. And I think that's the film perfectly because it goes 1 minute from like a family dispute to, oh, go walk to the shops and get me some milk, to him dying. And I think it's that turn which makes the movie so good because that was a real fear at the time. You know, there was a lot of gang crime at that time, you know, with the NWA and the rise of all that East versus West Side. It was a big thing. Many rappers did die of drive-by shootings just from their day-to-day life. And I think that's where the pacing gets it so perfectly. Yes, it's all over the place, but I think it's meant to be all over the place. Just like in the movie... give us an example of where you thought the pacing was off.
It's really just towards the middle, because it's fine at the beginning and it picks up at the end, but towards the middle of the film, I'm just there like, I don't know, I'm not as drawn into it as I was.
What instance were you sat there?
I can't think of a particular instance, not going to lie. It was the majority of the middle of the film.
Well, I think there were a lot of key points in the middle of the movie, like at the sort of hangout, everyone's there in their car, and, you know, someone bumps into someone else. And I think that's where the pacing gets it perfectly because it's a nice hangout. You know, they're talking about religion and how women are portrayed, blah, blah, blah. Is God a woman, blah, 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 blah. And they bump into someone and almost instantly the pace goes from pretty chill to, okay, it's intense because people are drawing guns. And then 2 seconds later, there's gunfire and everyone runs away and it's over. And the scene, and it goes back to a downtime on the pacing. I think that's sort of the magic, and I can see why it is an issue for some people, but I think it's purposeful that he's done that because then you do sort of get those moments of, it sort of puts you on suspense weirdly, because obviously when you watch the film, you sort of subconsciously know, okay, someone's going to die or something's going to happen because you see guns, and there's that thing where if they show a gun, it's going to have to be fired, or else, you know, the audience will be let down. So I think that's why the pacing is so good because just you know When you start watching the movie, you know someone's going to get shot. And every time a gun's drawn, you're like, this character could die. Doughboy could die or whatever.
I think I'm in this mindset because of the reading up I've done. Everyone's said that he's only a young director. It's flawed because he's inexperienced and new. But after hearing what you've said, I quite agree with what you say. I'm still not 100% sure. I think some of it wasn't intentional, but especially that scene where the shooting happens and they bump into each other. I think from that point on, you know it's going to kind of pick up a bit and it's going to kick off.
I think the whole thing with the guns, and the out of nowhere someone gets shot. I think it gives a really good insight into what the people that live in that situation actually do live like. It's really realistic in a way, because people do genuinely have lives like that. How people dying, getting shot in the street every day is so common that no one even notices it that much anymore, and everyone's just like, oh yeah, I'm badass. Everyone ends up in their gangs to protect themselves. There was one scene that I remember specifically. It was where, what was the main character called? Trey. Trey's girlfriend was sat at a desk writing, and then there was a gunshot, and she jumped. I think if that was me, I'd be like, oh, what is it? And I'd be looking out the window trying to see what's going on.
Not only that, she looked like, why is it happening again?
Yeah, she looked annoyed by it rather than kind of scared.
Yeah, like if that happened to our lives, she'd be like, oh my God, what's going on?
Yeah, I think it just shows how common it is for him. It's so common. And then Trey walks in and he just starts crying, and she's like, oh, okay.
That's why I'm particularly fond of the opening sequence, because it's, you're just given these no visuals for the first minute or so, and you can just imagine whatever you want to imagine, and it just shows that it could happen to anyone. It's so common, but also the fact that kids are not prone to it, but they experience this every day, and their lives are built around just gang violence, and it's so common to them they don't even bat an eyelid.
Well, I think one of my favourite scenes is the scene where I think it also sort of embodies what Harley was talking about, where she said, you know, they're used to it, but then they just sort of want it to stop, and that's when Trey gets pulled over by the police, and he pulls out the gun and puts it to him, and he's like, listen, I'm going to kill you right now. I could kill you right now, and no one would do anything about it because they'll just think you're another black criminal dying. And then there's that beautiful bit of acting where that single tear just rolls down his face, and it's like, oh my God, that scene just gives me goosebumps every time. And then he goes home and is like, why? I'm just sick of it. I just want it to stop happening. And it's a perfect scene. And I think also going on to Harley's point that the audio and the sound mixing for this film was so perfect, because it sort of created this, like, it felt like gangland, Los Angeles, you know, Compton style, because at the start of the movie you would hear gunshots and police sirens, and then by the end it's just background noise. Like, there's dogs constantly barking, babies crying, and in any other instance it would be like, wow, how annoying. But then for some reason your brain just sort of phases it out. So you're sat there watching, like, you know, almost a gang shooting, and it's almost like normal to you at that point, but in the background there's dogs barking and babies crying. It's normal
to make the audience feel like they are part of that community.
I like the whole thing with the helicopter as well. How the first time you hear the helicopter, you expect there to be the actors to react, but not one of them does. They all kind of ignore it, like it's not even there at all, because they're so used to it. And I think that's really clever the way it's done, like also with the spotlight from the helicopter going forward and backwards in the street, and they just walk through the street like it's nothing. But if it was here, everyone would be in their homes, like looking out the windows, being scared and stuff.
And also going back to the acting as well, I think it's nice to see, like, the guns being used as sort of like the fear on screen, because there's loads of movies where guns are just nothing, you know, they're pew pew, John Wick, people are just dying, no one's really scared of a gun. But in this movie you see the fear. When a gun's drawn, you sort of get the sense of, oh, okay. And it's like I think one of the best instances is at the start when Trey is taking the barbecue to his dad, and the car pulls up and just pulls the gun on him, and he sort of stands there, and there's just like it's like literally a short scene, but it feels so long. Of he sort of stood there confronting the man with this gun to him, and he puts the window down and drives off. And just the fear you feel in that scene is just so intense. It sort of makes guns scary throughout the whole movie.
Also the people in that car just purely did that just to make him scared. Like, they weren't actually going to shoot him up. They just wanted to scare him. And yeah.
Well, in the end, you know, that shotgun does kill someone.
True.
It does, and it's quite sad.
Can I just go back to the police again? Did you realise that it was the same 2 police officers?
Yep.
Every time they appeared, same 2 guys.
Also, one of them was black, and he's like, you'd think in a way, because he's brought up in, presumably brought up in the same situation as them, that he'd understand, but he's just as kind of
racist
towards them like the white police officer was.
And I think also the fact that it was the same 2 police officers at the start while Trey was a kid, and then he gets pulled over by the same ones, it just showed that they haven't got any better. It was the same black guy, the same police officer, and he doesn't remember him, but I think Trey remembers him.
I think...
Like,
sorry.
He hasn't changed as a person. He's still that really bad police officer that just wants to mess things up.
And I think the reason he's black and the reason he is the most ferocious one is, I think it just goes back to the message of the film. It's about black Americans killing black Americans. And I think that's the things about the whole movie is it's obviously a not very nice place to live. And the reason it's not a very nice place to live is because they're killing each other. And there's loads of instances in the movie where Lawrence Fishburne's character, Trey's dad, and he's giving that speech where it's like, there's a reason why everyone thinks this area is so bad. And that old guy goes, oh, it's them killing. But he goes, it's not just that. It's the house prices. It's the businessmen sort of putting us down. And I think that's also a good way of putting it, because they could very easily gone for the whole, the reason why this place is so bad is just because of the gang violence. But they do that a little bit, but then they also talk about the businesses and the contrast between Compton and the Hood and the white restaurant with the majority of white actors in. Later on, when Lawrence goes to see Trey's mum in the restaurant, and he's like, I'll have a cafe au lait, and it's almost silent. There's no dogs barking or gunfire, no helicopter, just nice and quaint.
It's like a loop. Like, everyone else sees this community as the bad people, and admittedly they do bad things, but it's not the whole community. Half of these people want to get out and move on to a safer place, but because they're looked down upon by like the government, white people, and even black people of higher authority. It's just they're never able to break free because they're just at a disadvantage already.
That makes me think about Stand By Me, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
What's his name? The one that's considered the bad kid, but he's actually quite nice.
No, in Stand By Me.
Stand By Me.
Oh, it's Stand By Me. LeChance.
No, the one that's Chris. That's it. Chris. It kind of makes me think about Chris in a way. Consider it, because he wanted to get out of it. He did in the end, but like the whole thing with his character with
but then he got killed, didn't he?
He was seen as the bad kid, and then he did end up getting out of it because he worked for it. Thing is, the thing with him getting killed, like Ice Cube's character, Doughboy, ended up getting killed at the end. And I feel like there's like a contrast between those two characters in a way. They're kind of similar, but not at the same time.
I think there's been a lot of inspiration taken from Stand By Me. Even like the parody bits in it, but even just down to the message. And
I wouldn't call it a parody, I'd call it more a homage, sort of. Because, and then talking about the ending, the contrast to the Stand By Me ending is when Chris died, he died intervening in an argument trying to settle stuff down before he was stabbed and killed. So he sort of had a weirdly just death because he died trying to keep the peace, whilst Ice Cube, it just said he was murdered, and I think the audience sort of assumes that he was murdered obviously by the people who knew the guy he just killed.
Like a revenge.
Yeah. So I think that does contrast the characters, and the way they both sort of disappear the same way. It's showing how Ice Cube obviously is a worse character, but in their brains, they were both doing something that was just. Ice Cube thought he was being just, killing the guy who killed his brother, and Chris thought he was being just when he was breaking up an argument in the McDonald's.
That is a very good point.
I do like both those films. Watching them both, kind of not straight after the other, but like quite close together. It kind of, I don't know what it is about them both, but they do both contrast really, really well. I don't know what it is. It is also obviously 'cause it is kind of inspired in a way by Stand By Me, Boyz N The Hood, with the train line bit where the 4 of the kids are walking down the train line, like they do in Stand By Me, and also the thing where they find the dead body. The contrast between their reactions. So in Stand By Me, it's kind of like that's what they're doing, and it's seen as a big deal, and it kind of changes them. But for the kids in Boyz N The Hood, they find the body and they're not really affected by it. They just talk about the smell.
It's also the fact that like the whole of the film Stand By Me is centered about these 4 kids going on this journey to find the body, and it's the whole film about that. Whereas in Boyz N The Hood, it's more like it's just a little scene. It's like it says that thing where it's like this is common, it happens all the time.
But I also think the reason why we do think of them so closely together, because they're 2 very, very similar films in 2 very different settings.
Yeah.
Stand By Me is about escaping. That's like everyone wants to sort of escape this town and become big and sort of grow up. They want to escape this child image of themselves, but then when they come back after seeing the dead body, which is basically the metaphor for growing up, when they come back they realise like Castle Rock is small, our home's small, everything we looked at before was so small on the grand scale of things, and so they craved this escape from their youth, and then when they got it they were disappointed. And Boyz N The Hood is about them wanting to escape, but not this childlike look on the world. They literally wanted to escape this horrible place, and I think that's why more inspiration between Ice Cube and Chris, because Chris did want to get out of Castle Rock, and so did Ice Cube. Like the whole characters were just like, we need to get out of here. And I think Doughboy's brother, where he wanted to get the scholarship and get out of here, like I think that was also a very powerful moment, you know, when she revealed that he would have passed and he would have got his scholarship with his baby. And it's like,
to me that also just shows like even if things are going well, it can just turn on an instant. It's like he had his whole life planned out. Yeah, you could say that. But he was the good kid, yet he still was the one who got shot down. It's
really heartbreaking how his mum sits there and opens the letter, and she reads it, and it turns out like, yeah, he could have gone to get the scholarship. But I don't know what it is, because he's just died. And they're all mourning, and then she goes and opens the letter, and it's a shame because he could have opened the letter when she shouted to him saying, "Oh, you've got your test results here," and she's waving it at him, but then he just walks away, and
but
it kind of.
If he did that, I don't think the scene would have worked so well, because then you already know he's
I think that's why it's so heartbreaking in a way, because he could have gone along and read it and found out the truth.
Yeah.
He could have done. He could have just turned around and says, "Oh yeah, thanks. I'll read it on the way to the shop," or something like that, or read it while he was stood there. And I think maybe if he had, it would have been a different situation. He may not have died because he might not have gone to the shop to get the milk. The mum might have sent Ice Cube or something because she wants to like praise him for doing so well or something like that.
And I think another heartbreaking bit is when Ice Cube brings back his dead brother, puts him on the sofa. His dead brother and his mum's just like, "What have you done? How dare you? Well, you've killed him." And Ice Cube's like, what? And she's just getting so angry at Doughboy just for killing his brother.
I think that's
heartbreaking.
Well, the scene before that, the bit where they fight, I think that's where that's important, because that sets it up so the mum thinks that it's something Doughboy had done, but it wasn't. It was a drive-by shooting. But because of that scene, the audience knows that, like, the mother knows that. I don't know, but I think that scene was important.
And
yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know why I said that without the microphone. Fighting when they had that fight before he left, and then obviously got shot. I think that's why the mum would have thought,
yeah,
"Oh, you did it just because you're."
Because like 5 minutes earlier, she'd seen them fighting and had to break it up.
It wasn't even a massive fight, really, was it? And the fact that he was so heartbroken, it's really sad.
But it's also the fact that that's the last thing the two brothers did. Was fight.
They didn't. I think that might have also made Doughboy feel more guilty about it, or that might have been
Yeah.
another reason why he went out to go kill the person that killed him.
Because he felt responsible for what happened. Because if he didn't fight, he wouldn't have stormed off, gone to the shop. Like
Yeah.
he feels an enormous amount of guilt, and yeah.
Anything else?
And I don't know. I think we're going to be wrapping up soon.
Probably it's
So I think we should finish on the note of, I think, the powerful note at the end of the movie where it comes up and it's almost the same intro from the start, Boyz N The Hood, but it just says, I think it's keep the peace. And I think that's just such a nice message for the movie. Like, just got to keep the peace, ain't you?
yeah. So yeah, thank you for watching, listening, even.
Thank you. Listening, yeah, not watching.
I mean, yeah. But what's next week, Ethan?
Next week is American History X. Oh,
Oof.
boy. Get ready to see some Edward Norton. Harley, you've seen him in Fight Club.
I haven't seen American History X though. Yeah.
He is jacked, and it's honestly a long movie, but it's a journey. Oh my God, it's a journey.
How long actually is it?
I don't know, but it's a
2 or
journey.
so hours?
I think so.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
Okay. See you later this week. Like, this is the end of Boyz N The Hood. Keep the peace.
Why is it that there's a gun shop on almost every corner? Watch me shoot this mother. Watch me shoot this mother.